and welcome to the Living Plate Teaching Kitchen, where we're changing the conversation around food and nutrition so you can meet your health goals with less stress in the kitchen. I'm Jeanne Petrucci, registered dietitian nutritionist, and today I'm so excited to have my friend and colleague, Karen Collins, join us. Hi, Karen.
Hi.
So Karen, if it's okay with you, I'm going to read your bio because I don't want to miss a bit. Okay. So Karen Collins is a registered dietitian nutritionist who promotes healthy eating as a consultant, speaker, and writer. You get a good picture of her special skill set from her trademark tagline, taking nutrition from daunting to doable. I love that, Karen. Karen is known for how she helps people get beyond the headline hype and put complex information into perspective and set realistic priorities for healthy eating. Her work focuses on areas of cancer prevention, survivorship, and heart health. Karen serves as the nutrition advisor to the American Institute for Cancer Research. She has authored multiple peer-reviewed research summaries for health professionals and over 2,000 articles for the public. Wow, it's amazing. Karen also writes in her spare time, writes a blog called Smart Bites, which runs on her website, KarenCollinsNutrition.com. So Karen, thank you again for joining me today and welcome to my kitchen.
Oh, I'm so glad to be with you. This is really exciting.
It's fun stuff. Could you do me a favor? Actually, what I'm going to do first, before I ask you to kind of do an overview of your principles of nutrition, I want to do a menu reveal today for our guests. Is that okay?
Absolutely. I can't wait.
Terrific. So I wish there were smell-o-vision because the kitchen smells amazing right now. We've got some things going. We are going to start with a raspberry mint iced green tea recipe, which I have here. I'll be sipping it throughout the broadcast to stay refreshed. We're going to follow with chickpea salad wraps. We're going to make a gazpacho, which is perfect timing for summer. And then we're going to finish with lentil mushroom stuffed peppers, but we're also going to show you how to do them with stuffed tomatoes as well.
Oh, I'm all set for my weekend food.
Yeah, there you go. And look, all really simple. I'm actually going to bounce around the recipes a little bit. We're not going to actually go in that order because I'm going to start with sauteing the mushrooms for the stuffed peppers and tomatoes. But while I start setting some things out, if you could give our dinner party guests kind of a general overview of your nutrition principles, Karen.
Sure.
Great.
It's funny. When I began my career as a registered dietitian, I used to say, oh, if only people could get more access to nutrition information. And today, one of the most frequent complaints I hear from people, including health professionals, is that they're overwhelmed by the amount of nutrition information available and frustrated trying to make sense of it all when the stories conflict with each other. You don't feel confident about identifying doable, healthful choices that fit in their lives. And, we can't prevent every case of cancer, but research shows that you can make choices about what you eat that lower your risk of chronic diseases like cancer and heart disease and support overall health for the life you want to live. To do that, many of us need to make some changes in our usual habits, but studies are clear that you don't need to eat perfectly in order to make a difference. And I think that is really important. And all research isn't equally strong, so you don't have to act on every single study that comes out. So for me, the key is to set priorities for realistic steps to healthy eating based on the big picture of today's strongest research and what fits in your lifestyle and personal preferences. So I'm looking for eating that can be healthy, doable, and delicious. And I know that's exactly what you specialize in.
It is. I love that you finished with that. That's just a great segue because, when we do live cooking demos and even cooking demonstrations in our kitchen, when, we have small groups come in, what I'm looking to hear is that was easy and this is delicious, right? Easy, delicious. And how does that fit into my lifestyle? How can I make this doable in my own kitchen? So yes, our philosophies are just so well aligned. And so having said that, why don't we just go right into the first recipe before we start with our strategy. So what Karen Collins is going to do with us today is share her 4 top strategies for following a cancer protective diet. And all along the way, we're going to be talking about the evidence behind these strategies, and then also some culinary tips, because we are in the kitchen. So we're going to actually start with the lentil stuffed peppers, because we do have some cooking to do. I started by actually Max Goldstein, our dietetic intern, just sweat some onions and some garlic for us ahead of time. So let me just take you through the recipe. If you pre-registered for this digital dinner party, you did receive the recipe packet ahead of time, but don't worry, there's still plenty of time to get the recipes. After the event is over, we're going to be dropping a link, and you can just send us a notification that you would like to receive the recipes. You'll get the recipes, a grocery list, and Karen created this beautiful, I think it's a 6-page handout of, summary of all of these strategies. So no worries. So the lentil stuffed peppers, I'm going to start by reading the recipe. It's olive oil, onion, portobello mushrooms, tomatoes, soy sauce, and garlic. The seasonings are pepper and cayenne pepper. And then we have some fresh basil and spinach, right? Did you have lunch yet? Because if you didn't, we're getting hungry.
Sounding really good.
And then bell peppers, but we're also going to show you how to do it with some tomatoes. Canned lentils, which is nice for convenience, and then half a cup of walnuts. So we preheated our oven to 425 degrees. We prepped all of our ingredients, which really is key to success in the kitchen. You want to, it seems like it takes extra time, but it actually at the end of the day saves you time, just prepping everything so that you can put it together. It also prevents you from burning things, right? Because it's all happened to us. We start sauteing the garlic and the onions, and then we chop the mushrooms, and then they burn. The onions burn. So it's always good to have everything prepped ahead of time. So I'm just going to get started here by adding my portobello mushrooms to my already soft garlic and onions. Just going to stir that up here. We're going to add some chopped tomatoes. It really is this simple, gang. I'm going to drizzle in some soy sauce. And if you're following a low sodium diet, you can eliminate the soy sauce altogether and just use like a low sodium broth or water, or you could use a lower sodium soy sauce. Our seasonings are salt, pepper, and cayenne pepper, so a little bit of kick here. And I'm just going to I'm going to stir it up here. We're actually sauteing these vegetables in La Crusade pan. And that is big thanks to our partners at La Crusade who sent us some nice equipment to use for our digital dinner party. So thank you, La Crusade. So now I'm going to let that just kind of simmer over medium heat. The key with mushrooms is to saute them until they begin to sweat. Like all of a sudden, they're just going to release all of their fluid, and you're going to have a lot of liquid in the bottom of the pan, but just keep cooking it off until things start to stick. So I'm going to put the cover on this. And Karen, I am going to ask you to just go ahead and start talking about our first strategy for following a cancer protective diet, which is more plants.
Absolutely. It's about making more nutrient-rich plant foods the focus of your meals and snacks. So that means including a variety also of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and pulses. A plant-focused diet means that plant foods are the largest part of your plate. It doesn't necessarily mean they're your whole plate. And you get so many benefits out of making that kind of choice. First of all, these are the foods that provide dietary fiber. And what we're learning now is that not all dietary fiber is the same. And that's another reason that the whole choice of variety becomes so important. Some kinds of fiber are prebiotics that help nurture healthy gut bacteria that reduce chronic low-grade inflammation that can set the stage for cancer development.
Karen, what would be a food that's high in prebiotics?
Well, some of the beans in particular tend to have that type of fiber, the dried beans and peas like chickpeas and things like that.
Great.
Oatmeal and some vegetables like the mushrooms that you've got cooking right there. Onions that you've got cooking right there. So there's a variety. It's not all fruit or all vegetable or all grains. It's a variety within that. But then other types of foods may not have prebiotics, but they have a kind of fiber that can bind harmful substances that reduce the body's exposure and helps the body eliminate them. And other types of fiber, what's called viscous fiber, is especially helpful in terms of promoting heart health, but also can help to keep your appetite satisfied, and so it's a help for managing your weight. And it looks like they may be helpful in terms of supporting healthful levels of certain hormones that would affect cancer risk.
So when you talk about, fiber playing a role in clearing some harmful substances, what would some of those harmful substances be? Can you outline that for our guests?
Well, any of the, there are compounds that are carcinogens that we're exposed to in food. They're small things just that naturally occur, or actually the bile acids that we produce as we digest food can become, if they're processed further through the digestive tract, can actually become cancer causing. So it's just a natural exposure, but when we have enough fiber to move things through, that seems to be probably part of why we see high fiber diets associated with lower risk of colorectal cancer.
So the fiber plays a role in capturing kind of all the nasty stuff in layman's terms, right?
Basically,
and
yeah.
Helps you excrete it, right?
Right.
As you pass the undigested food.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So 3 different kinds of fiber, and they each have potential to help reduce cancer risk. And then in addition to that, when we get fiber from these whole foods that we're talking about, we're getting antioxidant benefits. Some of these foods, like some of the fruits and vegetables we're talking about, have nutrients themselves, like say vitamin C or beta carotene, that are antioxidants themselves. That means they,
So I'm showing the pepper because a lot of people don't know that peppers are super high in vitamin C. And so we love using peppers of all colors, right? And can I bring up another interesting point?
Sure.
I think it's interesting. I don't know. You guys can determine. But, you have peppers in all different colors. So we're going to be using red peppers today, but there are green peppers, yellow peppers, orange peppers. And every color represents a different phytochemical on the spectrum. So it's just super cool that the whole concept of eat the rainbow really comes from the research that says, having a phytochemical or antioxidant rich diet can help reduce risk of many diseases. And you don't really have to think about the phytochemicals or their names. Just know, right? Just know that if you're eating color, you're getting a really good variety.
Right. And remember that white's a color too. Because
poor cauliflower. I know poor cauliflower always gets a bad rap.
Garlic, onions, mushrooms. I mean, they're kind of brown, but
celery root, kohlrabi. Yeah.
Right. So white's a color too, and white produce does have protective nutrients. But the important thing is that in addition to these basic nutrients, like say vitamin C, these plant foods also contain thousands of different phytochemicals, phytocompounds, natural plant compounds. And while you hear about them sometimes phrased as if they're antioxidants, that's actually based on studies in test tubes. And our bodies actually break down those compounds and turn them into other things. But they're metabolized to compounds that seem to turn on the body's own antioxidant defense system.
Wow.
And so again, that's part of the reason that this variety is important, because if all you needed is one big antioxidant, you could just load up on one single antioxidant and that would do it, right?
Right.
But when we're turning on our body's own system of antioxidant defenses, that's pretty powerful, and that's where we need that variety. And
the plants help fuel that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, terrific.
And then in addition, these compounds also can do have other protective effects by affecting cell signaling and gene expression based on what we see in laboratory studies. And so that's where we look at things like the allosulfur compounds from garlic and onion, the isothiocyanates from the cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and bok choy, the carotenoids, including lycopene in tomatoes and watermelon.
That's our tomato, and we're consuming raw tomatoes today. as well as cooked tomatoes. So can you spend a few seconds on that? Why would that be important for lycopene?
Well, for lycopene, it's actually better absorbed when it's either cooked or processed, like canned or heated in some way. It seems to break down the cell walls, and so we actually absorb more of what's there.
So how about tomato juice?
Perfect. Yes,
right?
That's an example, right?
Okay. Perfect. Yep. That's going into our gazpacho. So if we could pause right here, don't forget, I'd like you to, I want to ask you a question for our guests about gene expression, because you did mention that. And I want to make sure that our guests understand exactly what that means. But let me just get through this recipe really quickly, because it's just going to take a few seconds. Is that okay,
Sure.
Karen?
I'm just going to say one more example of compounds, because while we're on that,
Sure, of course.
And that's the polyphenol family. So that's in berries and citrus and whole grains and nuts. So it's not just fruits and vegetables that have these phytocompounds. It's all the plant foods, pulses, the beans, the whole grains, the nuts, and so forth too.
I'm so glad that you said that, because the beans get, sometimes we don't think about them as having these compounds, but if you take a look, for example, black beans are the perfect example, right? They're called black beans, but they're not really. If you've ever cooked black beans from scratch, what color does the water turn as you're cooking them? It's kind of like this deep purple color, right? Or the red kidney beans, the red. So you have the purple, the red, and then we have, some other colors in our lentils. There are black lentils, brown lentils, green lentils. So again, when you're thinking color, don't forget about our poor legumes and beans, right?
Yeah, and they're not just fiber. I mean, there's a lot of
great.
So,
okay, so I don't know if you guys have noticed as you're watching me cook here, but every time I lifted off the cover from our mushrooms, it was this enormous plume of steam. They are giving off a tremendous amount of water, and now it's starting to stick. So I am going to move on to finish the filling here. So we are going to add our lentils and some walnuts, some crushed raw walnuts, some spinach that's been pre-chopped, and actually I'm going to hold off on the fresh basil because I really like that when it's super fresh. We'll stir that in after the spinach wilts. So I'm actually going to turn off the heat here, and I'm going to let the lentils get warm. Now this is going to go in the oven anyway. So these lentils were pre-cooked. They were canned. If you can't find canned lentils, it's a great legume to cook because it cooks very quickly. So I think they only took like 12 minutes stovetop. So I'm just going to turn off the heat. I'm going to put the lid on and just let the spinach wilt, and then I'm going to add my basil just before I stuff my vegetables. And so that's it for the filling. I love adding leftover quinoa to this filling. My children love rice. They really like the white jasmine rice, which is, it's great. I love that they like rice. I would prefer that they have brown rice, but they really like the white rice. So I take that and I incorporate it into this dish, and then everybody's happy. They get the white rice with that nice aromatic flavor, and but then they're also getting the lentils and the walnuts, and it's all good. So back to the gene expression while I start stuffing my vegetables here. What is that exactly for our dinner guests? Can you explain what gene expression is, and if somebody, if somebody has a gene, that it doesn't necessarily dictate that while you are at risk for disease, that you will in fact get that disease, and how nutrition can play a role in expression of genes?
Yeah, so our genes are, you might say, like roadmap instructions for our body on processes and regulate everything that goes on in the body. And while people think about genes as only something they inherit, actually genes have to be can be turned on and turned off as they work or don't work. And what we're finding is that the process of cancer development is affected by a lot of, just like every other process, a number of genes. And so there are genes that turn on activities in the body that sort of turn a cell away from developing into cancer. These are called tumor suppressor genes. But those genes can be, again, turned on or turned off. And genes that sort of start or turn on a cancer process called oncogenes can be turned on or turned off. And so that's an area of really exciting research. And as you can imagine, most of it's at this point still in laboratories. We can't really see that in action in a human being. but the evidence looks as though these compounds that we form from some of these natural plant compounds in plant foods seem to affect the expression of those genes.
Perfect. Thank you for that explanation.
Sure.
If anybody watching has questions, please feel free to drop them in comments below, and we will answer them as they come in. And then if you're watching this as a recording, because this is going to remain on our Facebook page, feel free to ask questions and we'll get alerts, and Karen and I will do our best to answer those. So, okay, terrific. Are you ready to move on to strategy number 2?
Well, I just wanted to emphasize before we do real quickly that, again, we were talking before, Jeannie, about how that all these things are doable. And people think it sounds so overwhelming to make these plant foods, give them a bigger role. And it shouldn't be. It doesn't need to be that complicated. It just means looking at every meal. And, for example, have you actually had some kind of vegetable at lunch? And I don't mean just like one lettuce leaf on a sandwich.
Right.
What's your portion size at dinner? Just make it bigger, and look at variety. And if you think whole grains or pulses or anything is boring, it's probably because you have a really limited variety. And so by expanding your variety, not only are you doing what we just talked about as far as getting more of the benefits, but you're also, that's where the fun comes from.
Yes,
from experimenting and doing different things. So don't let yourself be in a rut.
Yeah, and I think that grocery stores are increasingly doing a really good job at shortening the time from like pantry to plate and fridge to plate, because they're prepping things ahead of time. I rarely, when I'm at home during the week, show up at 5 o'clock and putting together my dinner, I rarely have time to rice my own cauliflower, so I just buy it frozen, right? And you can also buy frozen pre-cooked quinoa and frozen pre-cooked brown rice. So it doesn't always mean you have to be slaving in the kitchen, right? Just, use conveniences when you can to help increase variety. And don't be afraid to try new things. And, sometimes trying new things mixed with things that you already like is a great approach. Great strategy.
That's a great strategy. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm going to stuff this cup might be a little big, but I'm going to stuff our tomatoes. So we have tomatoes that have been hollowed out. Max was kind enough to do that for us. And then the tomatoes weren't so ripe, so we popped them in the oven for just like 10 minutes to soften them a bit. And now I'm just going to stuff them. You can use a cup measurer, or you can use an ice cream scoop. That's actually one of my favorite ways to do it. And so this dish is 100% plant-based, right? So it's vegan. You could top it with feta cheese, right? Would that be okay, Karen, if we top this with a little bit of low-fat feta cheese?
Sure.
Okay. Could we add some chopped chicken to this dish as well?
I couldn't hear you. What?
Some like chopped chicken, like leftover.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Shredded chicken or something, right? So the lesson is not, that you certainly can be 100% plant-based if you would like to be, but you don't have to be. And if you, actually, I think later we're going to be talking about proportions, right? The 2/3, 1/3 kind of rule. So we'll cover that. But I just wanted to share with our guests that this is a very flexible recipe. If you like feta cheese, serves really great as a condiment here, or even shredded cheddar cheese on top, right? So
the other thing with that dish, Jeannie, is for people who are doing sort of mixed eating. Now we're looking at barbecue season, and rather than having huge amounts of the meat that's grilled on the grill, this could also be, even though it can be a main dish, it can also be a side dish. So as people are using, maybe smaller meat portions, this could be a great side that would sort of round out a meal with just a smaller meat portion.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because here's a super cool idea. So like I am holding, I don't know if you can see this, I'm holding half of a pepper that I've stuffed with this filling. This filling could be made the day before. I would withhold the basil because I like that freshness and that brightness. But you could make this the day before if you're having a barbecue. Throw the peppers or the tomato, probably not the tomatoes, they'll be a little wet, but throw the peppers on the grill to soften them a little bit. Put the stuffing in and get them back on the grill and serve them with whatever meat you're deciding, or non-meat alternative like tofu, whatever you're grilling.
Yeah.
This is a side, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Okay, so this recipe is all but done. I'm just going to be popping it in the oven for at 475 degrees for, it says here, about 20 minutes, which sounds about right. And then we'll take it out and show it to you later. So let's move on to strategy number 2. which is, can you read that? Whole foods versus processed foods?
Yeah.
Okay, let's cover that strategy.
Yeah. So one of the recommendations is to limit fast foods, sugar sweetened drinks, and ultra processed foods that are concentrated in calories to help you maintain a weight that's healthy for you. So this isn't a recommendation that directly affects risk of cancer, but it's important in two ways. First, because I think almost all of us as adults realize it's really easy to gain a little weight each year and then kind of suddenly end up saying, whoa, what happened here? And evidence is quite strong that excess body fat is not just a spare tire that makes it harder to tie your shoes. It's a metabolically active tissue. And excess amounts, especially deep around the abdomen, can raise levels of hormones and growth factors that can promote cancer development. And that body fat can secrete proteins called cytokines that promote inflammation, that creates an environment that's conducive to the cancer process. So limiting these ultra processed foods, you may have seen in the headlines recently, based on a controlled study that was done where people eating diets that included a lot of these ultra processed foods were gaining weight very quickly. They consumed a lot more calories and gained a lot more weight than people eating more kind of whole foods. And that's something we've seen in other kinds of studies before. So the concern is that it's not that any one of these foods is somehow, poisoning or causing cancer, but when your diet's full of a lot of them, it makes it easy to consume more calories than your body can use. And so they promote weight gain. And then
could I share an illustration of, kind of taking people on the spectrum from unprocessed to ultra processed?
Absolutely.
I've got a great example. So an orange, for example, right? An orange is a whole food. It is unprocessed. It was picked. It looks like it did when it came from the tree, right? Orange juice. Orange juice is minimally processed. So minimally processed food ingredients for our patients, we just say, just put up the yellow light. Like it's okay, but just really take a look at it, read the ingredients and understand how was it processed and what's in this minimally processed food. Ultra processed would be something like orange soda, right? Orange soda does not have orange juice most of the time or orange in it. So, in terms of thinking whole foods to processed foods, that really is a spectrum. And these days there's a whole lot in between. And so talking to your healthcare professional and your registered dietitian to understand, if something is minimally processed, just make some decisions about if it's okay to fit into your lifestyle, because sometimes these minimally processed foods, again, can help you eat a healthier diet because they provide some convenience.
Right. This recommendation is not saying avoid all processed foods, just like we were talking before about canned tomatoes, frozen produce. Those are processes, but when they're done in a way that you don't lose nutrients and you don't have a lot of added salt or sugar or unhealthy fats, then that's fine. The problem is when it's a lot of added sugar or fat or salt that's leading to weight gain. The salt doesn't lead to weight gain, but it raises blood pressure and makes the calories so concentrated that you tend to overeat. So that's the distinction. And it's, like you were talking about the rice. Brown rice would be best. It's a whole grain. Right. White rice is not horrible. It's just that it doesn't have all the benefits that whole grains do.
Right.
That's different than an ultra processed grain, where we've gone, for example, if you had wheat, going from whole wheat bread to white bread to donuts. Donuts and white bread are not the same.
Yes, perfect. And that's a really good example too, because one of the things that I like to share with patients, but also with our guests today, is that the process of processing food. One of the first things they do is take out the fiber. Right? Mm-hmm. They fractionalize the food. They take the food, they take the whole grain, which is the example you gave, which is perfect. And they break it apart into all of the bits. And then sometimes they put it back together with other things and sometimes they don't. But, really the first step to processing any food is fractionalizing it, breaking it up into all of its different bits. And again, that's where we come back to the whole food is best, right?
Yeah. So, don't be afraid of every little process, but look at those things where they've taken a nutritious food and then added so much sugar or unhealthy fats, unhealthy types of fats,
right,
that it's now not only not giving you the nutrients you need, but it's really a ticket to gain weight.
yes.
And those slow gains over time might not seem like much, but you end up in a situation where you've got these inflammation and hormones and things like that are not being your friend.
And one of the things I'm hearing from you is, just generally speaking, processed foods tend to be more calorie dense.
The ultra processed ones can be, yeah. And I know it's technical words, but I think it's getting to be something that we need to be aware of. When is it's a food that's just made more convenient to include, and when is it a food that's really not like the original food was?
Okay. Good point. So is it okay if we pause here so I can just take our guests through this? So we're going to move on to the gazpacho. This recipe is called Favorite Gazpacho because it's the favorite gazpacho of everybody I ever introduced it to. It's really great. I make it very regularly in my own home. Number one, because it's super easy and it utilizes produce that just tends to overgrow in my garden anyway, like the cucumbers and tomatoes. And it's just a great quick recipe. So the gazpacho has, I'm going to read the ingredients, cucumbers. I do prefer using the seedless cucumbers because they just have a lower water content and they tend not to dilute the flavor of the gazpacho, but you really could use any cucumber. Just remove the seeds first. Just run a spoon down the middle. Red bell peppers, again, you can use a variety of colors here. I like red, yellow, and orange versus green, but whatever floats your boat. 8 tomatoes chopped, some red onion, garlic. We're going to be using tomato juice, a lower sodium tomato juice, some sherry vinegar. This is the key ingredient here. Don't make this recipe without the sherry vinegar. So go out and buy it on your way home. If you don't have it in your pantry, get it in your pantry. It's key to the success of this recipe, as is really good olive oil. So if you have that really good bottle of olive oil, this is a perfect recipe for it. And then just salt to taste. So I have all of my ingredients kind of pre-chopped here. And as Karen covers our strategy number 3, as you start going on that, I'm going to run the Cuisinart and just pulse these vegetables to make them tiny for the soup. So we're going to move on to strategy number 3, which is proteins.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to throw a shout out to you, Jeanne, and the work that you do. Part of finishing on that processed food point, part of where we come in with a lot of those is that advertisers convince us that the only way we can do a quick and fast meal is that we need these ultra processed foods. And that's just not true. I love the work that you do at Living Plate, where you're sharing tips on how you can make delicious food super fast, and it doesn't have to be low on nutrients. So
yeah, thank you.
The work you do.
Thank you. Mutual admiration right here. Okay, so our third strategy.
Yeah.
Our third strategy is proteins.
Yes. So the bottom line message here is to really expand what your go-to choices are for protein, to include, if you want to eat only plant sources of protein, then that's fine. But if you want to include animal sources of protein, just make sure that you're doing that in a way that limits red meat and really minimizes your use of processed meat. Red and processed meat are connected with colorectal cancer risk when they're used too much. It's the 3rd most common cancer in our country, and so it's really something to be mindful of. So for red meat, choosing the lean cuts is a good start, especially for heart health. But an important message is that all red meat, which means beef, lamb, and pork, is higher in something called heme iron, and that seems to be one of the components that's the reason for the association with colorectal cancer risk.
Can I interrupt for a second? Can you just define heme versus non-heme iron for our dinner party guests? Great.
Yeah, it's just heme comes from hemoglobin, so it's associated with the amount of this particular kind of protein in these foods. And the iron that's been associated with that piece, it's the heme molecule. So it's not the iron itself, it's sort of this heme component that seems to lead to free radicals that can damage DNA and lead to formation of cancer-linked compounds within the gut. And emerging evidence also ties diets high in red meat to changes in the gut bacteria that can promote inflammation. So for people who choose to eat red meat, beef, lamb, and pork, the recommendation is to keep it to no more than 12 to 18 ounces a week. If you stick to portions the size of a deck of cards, that means you could be having 4 to 6 portions a week. If you can't so much trust yourself to keep that portion size, then you might think about red meat as a 3 times a week item.
Okay. So heme iron, to get it straight, heme iron comes from animal products?
From meats, red meat is higher than, say, poultry, and fish is lower in heme iron. So we're zeroing in on red meat here.
Got it. Okay. And non-heme iron is only found in plants.
What?
Non-heme iron is only found in plants.
No, actually, animal products will contain some non-heme also.
Oh, there you go. I just learned something today. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's just that the animal foods will be the plant foods won't have heme iron.
Okay.
It's kind of the opposite.
Okay, great.
Plant foods won't have heme iron. Poultry and fish has some heme iron, but red meat is the highest. And that's why it's easy to overdo if you're having excess amounts. So no more than 12 to 18 ounces a week.
So if you follow a predominantly plant-based diet, or even if you're vegan, the first question vegans get is, where are you getting your protein? So do you want to talk, since we're on the topic of protein, can you address that?
Oh, there's plenty of protein in non-animal sources. Now, it is true that some people who choose to give up meat, or not just meat, but to go vegan, think that they've done something healthy, that the whole key is just giving up animal foods, and they aren't being mindful about where else they're getting. It's not just protein, but a whole range of nutrients. But by including plenty of pulses of beans and lentils and nuts and seeds, as well as small amounts of protein from grain products and vegetables and things, you can get all that you need. That is not an issue.
Okay, terrific.
So the other call out as far as the being choosy about our protein sources is that even among red meat, it's not all the same. The regular red meat, beef, regular beef, lamb, and pork, we're talking about limiting processed meat.
So pork is not the other white meat.
It's not the other white meat. Sorry.
So, right. So I'm of the generation when they actually ran that campaign, and then the government shut them down. So yeah, there was a campaign at one point that pork is, and not that pork is bad, right? So you're saying that including limited amounts of the.
If you want to eat those choices, there's no evidence that you need to give them up. It's just that some people are eating them too much.
Okay.
And in particular, I want to call out attention to processed meat. That's meat that is smoked, cured, salted, or has added preservatives. So things like hot dogs, bacon, sausage. And this has an even stronger link to colorectal cancer risk than what we would call fresh red meat. So this is something you really want to try and limit. The average American has almost an ounce a day, and that's just really high.
Of processed meats.
Of processed meat, yeah. So thinking about other ways, now these are, sometimes it's just what we're in a rut for. It's just what else would you grill? What else would you have at a sports event? What else would you have for lunch? I mean, whatever your rut is.
That's why our meal plans are super helpful, because we think of that for you, right? You can just use the meal plan and find an alternative to something.
Exactly. It's just a matter of stepping outside the box and not staying in your same rut. So instead of bacon on a sandwich, you have slices of avocado. Instead of if you have eggs instead of sausage, you have tomatoes or fruit. Or when I was in Ireland, they have a tradition of this kind of a bean dish that goes with breakfast, and before that, I had never had bean dishes with breakfast. It was delicious. So there are lots of different ways to do this. And I love that we've got 2 dishes today that sort of expand people's awareness of how you could use plants with the lentil stuffed peppers, and then the chickpea salad. So many ways to do that.
Next, So can I show? So while Karen was chatting, if you noticed, I was just pulsing the ingredients. Just a quick pulse. I don't run it until they're pureed. So I'll actually hold it up. I think you're probably going to be able to see them close enough. So everything is kind of a fine chop. If you really want to spend some time in the kitchen meditating over your cutting board, you could do it by hand, but I love using my Cuisinart to get this fine chop. And so we've added the cucumbers, the peppers, the tomatoes, the onion, the garlic here, and the tomatoes, did I say that? And now I'm going to add our sherry vinegar. Do we have a question? Okay, hold on. Karen, we have a question. So it's going to pop up on the screen now. Can you read that, Karen?
Can I speak to uncured processed meats? Yeah, that's a big question that I get a lot. That's some of the processed meats like bacon or something like that, where they don't have sodium nitrite added. And so they, the sort of the way our labeling system is set up, they have to label them as uncured. But they include a component from celery, which is high, provides a source of nitrates. And we just don't have evidence to know whether that's any better. What we do know is that although for heart health, we recommend vegetables like dark green leafy vegetables like spinach and things, and they're high in nitrates, and that's good for your blood vessel health. But something about nitrates when they're combined in a meat product, they seem to combine with some of the specific proteins there and form these cancer-causing compounds. And so we really don't know that by providing them in a different source, they're going to be any better. So until we have more research, I would choose them if you want, but I would put those uncured processed meats in the same basket, so to speak, as far as something to really just minimize and have only occasionally.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I do at home to kind of minimize my dependence on the sliced meats is just bulk cooking, like a chicken breast or a turkey breast. We have a great recipe for a slow cooker turkey breast or in an Instant Pot. I literally just put it in, let it cook overnight, and then I slice it myself.
Nice.
And keep it in the fridge, and then we have it throughout the week. So it really doesn't take that much time. I mean, for those kinds of recipes, maybe 5-10 minutes, you season the animal protein, you pop it in the oven again, or the slow cooker, and then slice it yourself and keep it in the fridge, and then you can have it on a sandwich. Does that make sense, Karen?
Yeah, it's a great alternative. And there are so many things for any, it depends what your situation is, the way you tend to use those processed meats, but there are alternatives. So if it's mainly sandwiches, then the option that you just talked about, or exploring more uses of ways to use beans is great. If it's grilling, then people just totally lose track of the fact that you can grill chicken breast, you can grill fish, you can grill things made with beans. You can grill marinate tofu and grill tofu. I mean, there's always other choices. We just get stuck in one way of doing things.
Right, because we think it's the most convenient, and and sometimes it is. But again, just 5 or 10 minutes to prep something ahead of time. And at certain deli counters, I don't think all of them, but certain deli counters, they roast their own turkey breasts and their own chicken breasts, and they can slice it for you there. So if you really do like that thin cut, but ask to see the nutrition label. They have to show it to you. So they'll either have a book or they'll have the label, and just read it. If it just says chicken breast, then you're good, or turkey breast, then you're good. So just being a little bit more aware before purchasing can be helpful too. Okay, so I have our tomato juice, which I'm going to add. So I stirred in our all-important sherry vinegar as well as our very good olive oil. And now I'm going to be pouring in 6 cups. I mean, this makes like a trough of gazpacho. So hopefully you're all going to be making it this weekend. I like this recipe. If I'm having a dinner party, or just like a cookout for even 15 or 20 people, I will make this and serve it in shot glasses. Super fun.
Oh, fun.
Like the taller shot glasses. So maybe 4 ounces or so, or like serve it in a mug. It's what's really
what people used to call juice glasses.
A juice. Was that a thing?
Old-fashioned. Oh yeah, old-fashioned juice glasses were like this big.
There you go. So everything now is like bigger and better. So maybe you have to go on Etsy and purchase some little juice glasses. But yeah, I have some shorter glasses. I think I got them at Crate and Barrel, and they're great. They're really cool for this. And I serve them with the basil leaves. It looks super fancy, but it's really basic. So here you go. I can't tilt it because it'll all spill out, but we're going to plate it and show it to you later. So that is our gazpacho. So hopefully
And
you all
that'll
get
keep, how
inspired.
long would you keep that in the fridge, Jeannie?
For up to 4 days. So it's all plants. So we're following health safety rules. Keep it in a cold refrigerator. I will store it. I'm actually going to take this and put it back into, I love mason jars because they're glass and they don't hold smells. I'm going to pour this into 2 of these and put the lid on and keep it in the fridge. This is going to taste great today, but it's going to be even better tomorrow, which I love because if I'm entertaining, I don't really want to be, running my Cuisinart and making dirty dishes. So you can make it up to a day or 2 ahead of time. And then if you're doing a picnic or a cookout, you can just transport them in the mason jar and serve them when you get there.
Well, and it's such a refreshing dish. When the hot weather comes and it gets so hot and sticky, and you don't feel like cooking a vegetable.
Yeah,
I
and
love to have something like that in the fridge and just go back to it throughout the week. Yeah, great idea.
Okay, terrific. So let's move on to principle number 4 while I bring out our last recipe, which is our chickpea salad wraps. So strategy number 4 is progress versus perfection. And I know you like to spend a lot of time here, so I'm going to let you get started.
Oh, I just think it's so important to aim for progress instead of perfection.
Yeah.
As I said before, you can drive yourself crazy trying to keep up with every nutrition headline that comes out, and it's just not necessary and not helpful. So if you set your priorities on a few steps, a few changes that will make the most difference, and don't try to do it all, that lets you keep from going crazy. And then just start where you are and aim for some progress. A lot of these things, as we've talked about throughout our time together today, it's not that they're hard to do. It's just uncomfortable. Anything you're not used to doing is uncomfortable. But you know what? The only way it gets comfortable is by doing it more often. And I think that's the secret, because you don't want to be checking a list and making it hard for yourself. You want it to just be creating a new lifestyle. And so put the fun in it. Have fun experimenting with different ways to flavor cancer protective foods deliciously, and keep your kitchen stocked. And I think those are 2 really key things. Once you free yourself from this image that you have to, do things perfectly and just aim for step by step, make sure you're making it taste good. If everything that you've relied on for flavor is really not healthful, then you can't expect the food to taste great. So you need to, have fun, shake it up with flavor and crunch by including some nuts in things. Think about all the most flavorful cuisines around the world. They all include an abundance of vegetables and beans. So it's not that those foods are not delicious, but each of these cuisines have found different ways to flavor them with garlic or onion or herbs or spices or things like that. And so have fun. Let yourself have fun and find what you like best. I think the way that makes that work, we know that when we have home cooked meals, they're more healthful than the things we've eating out, and especially if it's stuff you're just grabbing on the run.
Right.
And so when time is tight, you need to have that stash of ingredients on hand that you can count on to pull together quickly. I've included kind of my version of a checklist for that in the handout that I made for today. Think about having those beans and some whole grains and some nuts and seeds and the herbs and spices. Have like a baseline bunch of things around that you can pull together. And then gradually over time, you might find particular things that fit the kinds of food that you like, that you want to also keep around, flavor enhancing things, whether it's roasted tomatoes or roasted peppers or olives,
like sriracha or tahini, which we're actually going to use now. That's actually a good segue. Can we get into it?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so our chickpea, this is a no tuna salad. It's just a chickpea salad to be used in place of any kind of a mixed, fish or meat salad that you would have at home. If you were wondering what I was doing over here, I was using a potato masher to mash the chickpeas. And Karen, I love what you said about the importance of stocking your kitchen. We have a teaching kitchen here, so obviously our pantry and our fridge is pretty well stocked. Our grocery list for today was so short. I mean, we had like 3 bags coming into the kitchen, and guess what? It was all fresh produce. Everything else was here. So a lot of these key things like seeds and nuts and tahini paste, having them in your pantry just makes it a lot easier, just reduces the stress. You're not buying things all the time. And if you are, let me just note here for our guests, if you are transitioning, to a more plant-focused diet and a more whole food-based diet, it does take time. And so initially the first week or two, or even the first month, it seems like you're buying a lot of different things for your pantry, but then eventually you're not really buying those things anymore because you're not using them in bulk, right? You're not using tons of tahini or tons of sauces and spices and things like that. So just getting them into your kitchen is really important. So I mashed the chickpeas with my potato masher. I'm actually going to keep that aside because I'm going to continue to use that. I am going to read the ingredients for you quickly. Chickpeas, tahini. Tahini is ground sesame paste. You can buy pretty much at any store. Dijon mustard, which is a great flavor booster. Maple syrup, which adds just enough sweetness to make this really yummy. Some chopped red onions, celery, pickles. Right? Pickles are a high sodium product, so we don't serve them, even as a side dish, but we do like to utilize them as a flavor booster instead of added salt. Some lemon and lemon juice, capers, again, another little salty burst of flavor, some pepper, sunflower seeds. We have whole lettuce leaves that we're going to stuff, and sliced tomato. So you literally just add them all into a bowl. The first thing you should do is mash your chickpeas and then just add all of your ingredients. I have my lemon juice, celery, chopped celery, some chopped red onion. If the red onion is too strong of a flavor for you, just pick another vegetable from that family, because Karen did talk earlier on about the importance of these allium vegetables like scallions and garlic and chives and onions. So just pick one that you like. I'm going to add some sunflower seeds. Karen, I love that you said, adding crunch to make it fun. Yeah. That's what the sunflower seeds are for. Here are our chopped pickles. I added the capers, a little bit of maple syrup. Oh, is there a question? Okay. Oh, okay. We have 10 minutes left. So I'm getting my signal here that I need to speed it up here. Okay. A little bit of mustard, some tahini paste. Okay, and that's it. So now I'm just going to mix these all up. Karen, did you have anything else that you wanted to add about, not letting the pursuit of the perfect interfere with the good?
Well, I think just following up on that idea of stocking your kitchen is the other side of that card is to, especially while you're getting used to and building up these habits, to make a list of maybe 5 meals that you can pull together quickly from those items that you're going to keep on hand.
Right.
When again, it's just about creating new habits. And if you're not used to having those things, you can have all this stuff sitting in your kitchen, but not know what to do with it. So I imagine most people have, I call them Plan B days, where I had a plan for what I was going to do, but yeah, things kind of fell apart. So we go to Plan B. And
well, so go ahead, you share with me, what's your Plan B? Because everybody has like 2 or 3 Plan Bs in their back pockets. Like, what is your Plan B? You're home, you need to feed people, it's late, you're tired, what do you make?
Well, it depends on the season. A lot of the time in the winter months, I live near Buffalo, so we got a lot of those.
Yeah.
Some kind of soup or sort of chili where I can just combine. It's the dish that lets me take whatever I have left in the freezer, in the fridge, some beans, whatever herb I'm in the mood for. If I'm in for more of a Middle Eastern flavor or French or Italian or Mexican or whatever, and just use that kind of dish. It lets me both use what I have on hand and also if there's stuff that looks like it's getting near going bad, use it, move it along.
Yeah. So I'm going to share with our dinner guests what I made for my family last night, because I got home at like 4:30. I had to drive an hour to get my daughter to a softball game. And my husband and my younger son, we were all going to be there, the 4 of us, in the middle of nowhere. So no option for takeout, and hungry, right? We weren't going to be getting home till 8:30 at night. So I literally had about a half an hour. So I I almost always have a leafy green in my fridge. So I sauteed some Swiss chard with some garlic oil. And for my husband, I threw on a can of salmon. I just plopped it right on top. For the kids, I made quickly a bean and pasta and just tossed that. And everybody was happy, grabbed a bunch of grapes. And so, nothing fancy, but everybody was satisfied, and we were able to eat it. But we, sat on the sidelines, and yeah. So, that's my story. And I often serve canned beans are a staple in our family, and I always have frozen quinoa and frozen rice in my refrigerator, which is really important for me because I can just defrost it super quick, stove top, and we have a meal.
Yeah, the freezer becomes such a helper, not only for the frozen things that you buy at the grocery store, but if you're going to cook up some lentils, or if you're going to cook some kind of whole grain, why not make extra and then freeze it in meal-sized containers, and then you've got it done.
Perfect. Okay, so we're about to get to our resource roundup. So I am going to just show everybody our chickpea salad wrap. So that I literally just threw everything into the bowl with the mashed chickpeas and stirred it up. I promise you will not regret making this. It's super fun. The textures are great. The burst of flavor is great. And, it doesn't taste like tuna salad. Although if you wanted to add some seaweed flakes to this, you actually could make it taste more like tuna. But, take it for what it is. It's a delicious chickpea salad that really holds together quite nicely. You can see I've got it in this cup. You could serve it on whole grain bread for sure. I just thought it would be interesting to use the butter lettuce wraps. And I topped it with...
following on what you said about the ingredients in that would maybe raise some concern about sodium level. When people look at the recipe, they'll see that the total amount of sodium per serving there is very reasonable. So just because an ingredient has some sodium in it, it depends on the amount you're using. And if you're not using a lot of ultra-processed foods that come with, sodium as you bought them from the store, you can still use little bits of these to add flavor.
Right. Lower sodium doesn't mean no sodium.
Right.
Like for our clients, when we talk about lower sodium, really just taking the salt off the table is a great first start. And then reducing the amount of highly processed foods. But, naturally occurring sodium, even a little bit of added sodium to foods, and using the lower sodium tomato juice is probably going to keep you well within your limits. Yes?
Yeah, that's like another side benefit of that. Shifting the use of the ultra-processed foods. Right. The vast majority of American sodium isn't from the salt shaker.
Yes.
It's from these highly processed foods.
Okay.
So once you cut down on those, you've given yourself room to use these small amounts of things like capers or whatever.
Yeah, great. So I'm thirsty, so I'm just taking a sip of our tea. So we always like to share with our dinner guests a beverage because we don't want them to go thirsty. So this was green tea that we steeped ahead of time. It is a yerba mate, and we took some fresh fruit and just mashed it up and added it with some fresh mint and some lime juice, and I just garnished it with some lime here. I'm using a mason jar that has a nice big straw because there are chunks of fruit in here, so it's like a sangria. It's super fun. What I love about this, and I am going to be taking it on the road with me. I don't know if any of you have seen this, but the mason jars that have the lid.
Oh, cool!
Have you seen that? It's awesome. Right, so you have a nice, sustainable way to enjoy your iced tea on the road or for a picnic. So here are our recipes before we do the resource roundup. Again, we have the chickpea lettuce wraps here. We have the beautiful and delicious favorite gazpacho. We garnished it with some fresh basil. And then look at these tomatoes, how they came out of the oven, so beautiful. And again, feel free to top that with some plant-based cheese or vegan cheese, or I'll probably do a squirt of sriracha on this. I love spicy. So that's it. Came together pretty simple. Let's do the recipe, not the recipe roundup, the resource roundup. Sorry, guys. A couple of things that are important that I want everybody to know about. I have dropped in comments a variety of links. One link is for the Cancer Health Check by AICR. Another link is for the New American Plate Challenge by AICR. Karen, do you want to just take a few seconds to talk about the New American Plate? Because we actually didn't talk about that.
Yeah, the New American Plate is AICR's, the American Institute for Cancer Research, their approach to putting these recommendations that are based on the most solid evidence into place, where you look at the proportion of these plant foods on your plate. At least 2/3 of your plate would be plant foods, meaning whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and beans, and no more than 1/3 from animal foods if you want to include them. And then also looking at the portions you eat, because we know that portion is an important part of what makes it healthy too.
Yeah, that's great. And then
go ahead.
I just wanted to mention too, before we go, I dropped in 2 links for health professionals. So we do have some of our colleagues joining us today, some fellow registered dietitians. We dropped in 2 links that are great resources as well. One link that I didn't drop in that I do want to mention is for also on the AICR.org website, is a tab for foods that fight cancer. What I love about this tab is that if you wanted to take a deeper dive into the science behind the compounds in certain foods and kind of understand the mechanisms the mechanisms in play as part of a cancer protective diet, it's just such a great resource. And I just, for a lot of our clients, they really want to be well educated. And so going to an evidence-based resource like AICR.org is just a great place to start. You can go as deep as you want. If all you need to know is that blueberries have cancer protective effects, great. But if you want to understand what the compound is and you want to read the research articles, you can go ahead and take that deep dive. I strongly encourage it. It's one of my favorite recommendations for people. Resources.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and for health professionals, the AICR.org website is also the place that they can access the full third expert report that has all the summary of all the research that's been evaluated. There's also a summary. Now, the full report is more than 12,000 pages.
Yeah.
The summary is...
The summary is pretty hardy, too. I got a copy. It's pretty hardy.
It's a little over 100. But it does provide an update on the science and an explanation of the recommendations so that you feel more comfortable discussing what are the priorities and what does it actually mean as people try to put it in place.
Karen, thank you so much for joining us. I'm just so thrilled that you were able to be with us for this party today. So you can visit Karen at KarenCollinsNutrition.com. Her Facebook page is also Karen Collins Nutrition. Did I got that right?
Yes.
And Twitter, the same, Karen Collins Nutrition?
No, at Karen Collins RD.
Oh, at Karen Collins RD, terrific. And for Living Plate, please feel free to follow us on Instagram. We're always posting announcements and doing Insta stories and providing you with some recipes. If you would like to connect with a registered dietitian who provides our meal plans to give you some more ideas about how you can follow a cancer protective and healthy diet, just reach out to me at livingplate.org and we'll put you in touch with a credentialed healthcare professional, nutrition professional to guide you. So again, Karen, thank you. Guests, thank you for joining us. And please join us next time for our digital dinner party. We have another one coming up in a couple of weeks and just watch for that announcement. For now, thank you from the Living Plate Teaching Kitchen. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thanks to all of you.